What's up, guys? Welcome to the Mad Men Pod, where we talk about marketing and ads and business shit. We had a lot of pressure to pick some good topics for today's episode because we have a badass guest and we wanted to make sure we impressed her. So I'll let Salim do the honors.
Thanks, Adil. Well, it's my pleasure to introduce our guest today, Shama Hyder. Shama is the founder and CEO of Zen Media, a B2B PR and marketing consultancy. She's an international keynote speaker and a best-selling author. She has worked with some of the world's leading brands, including, but not limited to, Chase Business, the U.S. Navy, Forbes, NASA, Tata, McKinsey, Bain, Hilton, and so many more. Fast Company calls her a millennial master of the universe and a Zen master of marketing. She's a Forbes and an Inc. 30 Under 30 alumni, and LinkedIn has called her the top voice in marketing 4 years in a row. Welcome to the show, Shama. It's great to have you here.
Thank you, guys. I'm excited to be on the Mad Men show. I guess today it's Mad People.
It's ironically of the name of the topic of the brand, and then we get female guests. It's pretty fun.
But I think Mad Men is less about gender, right? It's much more about the era when advertising reigned supreme, and it was like the good old days of advertising, where there was a lot of storytelling and creative work. And so you think about New York and in the 50s and 60s, and so yeah, I the name is perfect.
There we go.
Well, thank you, Shama. So should we jump into it, guys?
Let's do it.
Let's go.
Men go mad.
Who's gone mad?
Mad Men.
You're mad.
The man's mad.
Mad Men.
I'm mad.
So let's kick it off with our first dud or stud. What happens when your company gets bad PR? Most communication experts will tell you the goal is to always minimize the exposure. However, Carta CEO Henry Ward seemed to take a more direct approach. In an open letter to Medium.com, his customers and employees, Henry decided to call out the allegations directly. In this open letter, he talks about the struggles he has with the media as a CEO, and I quote, "Reporters built careers exposing companies and CEOs for bad behavior," unquote. According to Access Now, Carta, which is a SaaS fintech company valued at over $7 billion, said that the number of news articles written about Carta and Ward spiked by 800%. Definitely not minimizing exposure here at all. So what do you think? Was that a dud or stud move by Henry Ward? Shama, this is specifically up your alley. You even wrote a LinkedIn article on this. What are your thoughts on here?
Yeah, Salim, I mean, it was a really good case study of what not to do, right? And so here's the thing, I'm not a big cancel culture fan, so even when we say a dud, I'm not beating up on the guy. I think, let's just be very generous and say his heart was in the right place. And if he was even coming at it from a perspective of I want people to know my truth, obviously you can tell he's very hurt, right? The anger and kind of hurt come across in the piece. And so, and he wrote this blog post on Medium to say, I want to help other CEOs. The thing is, when you're in a crisis, it's not the time to be helping other people with what you have not crossed that divide. You need to get to the other side, right? Think about if Sam Bankman-Fried was let me tell you what to do at trial. Nobody wants to hear it. Get through your trial. It's not the time where you can really be a prophet or a consultant. You need to get through this process. And so, so let's say given that his heart was in the right place, I just can't see any comms professional who said, this is a great idea, Henry. Sure, write this. Because we did a couple of things, and I think this is sort of the big, misconception when it comes to PR, is that it is both a credibility and a distribution channel. And there was a time where historically, right, everybody got their news from whatever they read, the New York Times, the Wall Street Journal, your local paper. That's all you had before the internet, before, your radio, that. These are your sources for information. But today, where you're just as likely, if not more likely, to read a story on LinkedIn if someone shared it, right? Or someone messaged you on WhatsApp in a group chat that you're in, or, you saw it in a Slack channel. You're more likely to see it through those avenues than you are the actual source. And so, when you have 375 million people on LinkedIn, and so it's very interesting because he thought everyone must have read this Fortune piece and then decided to proactively wage war. And the challenge was even so much that he like didn't appreciate the piece. You just can't say the media is fake, right? The media is bad. All it comes across is like, dude, you don't know how to play the game, and you seem bitter, whether you are or not. That's how it comes across. So yeah, I mean, lots of learnings there, and certainly like the biggest one being don't fan the flames, right? When bad things are happening, you hunker down. If you've been asked questions, be honest, be reasonable. Like their VP of comms should have totally put out a response. But for the CEO to be like, no, none of this has ever happened here. And it's like, it's a lot. Now I think it's interesting you compare it to like Rand Fishkin, who was at CEO Moz for many, many years and is like, Rand is old school marketer. People respect him. He's been around for a long time. No one really understood why he left Moz. It was very sudden. He started Spark Toro. Well, he recently wrote a post on why he left the company. And when you compare the two, it's night and day, right? Because Rand shares about like his personal journey. He even says like the people who I felt like I wasn't getting along with at this time, this is probably what they would say. Like he shares their narrative. And at the end of the post, you're cheering for this guy. Like, yeah, this is awesome. So anyway, I think it's interesting that whatever happened with Carta, and then at the same time Rand wrote this piece and just comparing them next to each other, like good lessons in crisis calm.
I think it can work for some CEOs. I feel like when you have Elon Musk calling the media crazy, or Kim Kardashian recently did this with Skims. She took negative comments on their stuff and made it into this campaign to reverse the meanings on all those negative things. It can be done in an artfully way.
It's one thing to like jujitsu your critics, right? So we had this campaign where, back in the day with Dippin' Dots, where I think the press secretary of the time had said he hates Dippin' Dots. It was crazy. And so, the CEO had done an open letter, right? And the open letter was like, listen, we're here to make friends, not enemies. It was a very well crafted letter. And it was, and it was funny. It's, can you take this and can you make fun of it, right? Can you have fun with it? Or I think one of those great examples is where a cafe had the sign that said, come try the worst burger in the world that one guy has ever had, right? It was like a Yelp review. And there was another brand where people talked about how the ski slope was really advanced, like it was not for the lighthearted, and they were like, yeah, that's great, we want this for the people that really want that, like the high risk, right? So yes, can you jujitsu it? Absolutely. Can you have fun with it? Yes. In this case, where the allegations are like of sexual assault and ex-employees coming out and speaking against the culture, totally changes the tone, right? It's just not, this is not levity. This isn't people not liking your product or service. This gets to some really, really tense issues, especially in like a post Me Too world, which is just different. So yeah, can it be done? Yes, but it's very specific stars have to align for you to be able to do it.
Yeah, I mean, Elon Musk said that he's trying to populate the world again, or go in that direction. Would people accuse him of him having too many kids with like coworkers and stuff, right?
Yeah, I just think like, while Musk is an interesting character, he should not be the bar for any CEO anywhere in the world. It's just because he is like a category of one. And so like of all the people that you can learn from, Musk is probably not your go-to. True. Just because of, what he's achieved and what he's doing. But yes, category of one for sure.
You could also just buy the company and then just say, hey, okay, I'm just going to say what I want to say and become a town hall now, right? X is supposed to be the town hall.
Yeah.
I did read your article. I love the take that you made about how Henry Ward specifically lost the control of his narrative that he was trying to push, right? I think, Adil, when you're referencing, like, certain people can get away with calling out the media as the enemy. We've seen it work all the way up to the presidency to the United States, right? But I think the difference, what I'm seeing is Henry Ward here lost the control of the narrative that he was trying to push. And other voices like yours, Shama, had been the louder voices that have been able to catch the waves. And I don't know anything about Carta. I work on the consumer side in the advertising world. This is the only thing I know about Carta now. And that is not what Henry Ward will want me, what happening, right? And I think you raised a really good point that him fanning the flames is what has created this mess. And you've allowed the media to can take over the narrative that you were trying to push by making them the enemy. And here's the result of that.
Yeah, and look, the media is not perfect, so that's the thing. A lot of what he's saying, yeah, I get it. How do reporters get promoted often? Exposés have been journalism's bread and butter. Like, that's what gets you the Pulitzers, right? Nobody gets a Pulitzer for writing a great, hey, this company's awesome, this guy's doing a great job. They get the Pulitzers for saying, look what I uncovered, this big scandal. Like, I get that. And rather than cursing the world, it's the same thing as saying, like, like Adil, now being in your space, like e-commerce, social media and influencers and so forth. So if you're like, no, I hate this world, like I don't like that these guys can post anything. But the smart brands are like, how do I take advantage of this, right? Like, this is the landscape. People often ask me, they're like, what's your favorite social network? What do you love? And they're always surprised when I say, like, none. Like, I don't have loyalty to any network. I don't have like a sense of, I'm not emotionally attached to anything. I only care about what gets results, and I'm happy to use it until it does. And like, look at Facebook ads. They were amazing for a certain point, right? Like, to your hat, this point, the ROAS on that stuff was great. Like, it was, but there was a certain time, and then it ended. And right, like that arbitrage time is over. Early days of advertising. It happens. But it's just not enough to throw your hands up in the air and say, well, because the media gets it wrong or has these inclinations, we are anti-media. Just can't do that.
Absolutely.
Well, clearly, I think Carta's CEO doesn't have media on the table, right? I don't think he's got a good VP of comms or VP or PR agency that's guiding him through this. I think this is definitely a one-off to say, hey, look, I'm going to do this on my own. And we guide a lot of customers and clients on the cybersecurity side, right? When they get an incident happens, we kind of navigate and say, hey, look, is this something you take to the media because you're publicly traded, right? You have some responsibilities to the market to say stuff, but then there's also like, hey, how much of it do you really need to say, right? You affected X amount of clients. Here's the story. Here's what happened. Here's what was contained. Are they affected? How much of it is really going to happen? Look, I think if he didn't say anything, 10 people would have found out and people would have moved on with their life. But now that he said something, everybody knows and everybody's talking about it. They got us talking about it.
Common sense, man. Like, again, and people think it's because it's such a big deal in their world. As you tell people, like, content moves at the speed of your feed. So when you spend hours on a post, people are going to scroll through that within seconds, milliseconds. Like, it's just, you are part of a much bigger ecosystem. Like, yes, if you are an entrepreneur, if you're a marketer, you're an advertiser, you may live, breathe, and eat like your stuff, right? Like, you dream about it. It's all you think about. But the other person, the consumer, your customer, you are just one more brand in all the brands and all the other things happening in their life. And I think it's just that kind of perspective is very important.
Let's move on, guys. Chick-fil-A is testing a hamburger. Yes, the Eat More Chicken restaurant is adding a hamburger at a test location. Not eating burgers and not selling them has been the core of Chick-fil-A since 1967. But now the chain is testing hamburgers in order to potentially add them to its menu. Their simple menu has always had a few guest appearances, but all featuring chicken. But wow, this would be a huge shift in strategy. So what do we think on this, guys? Dud or stud?
Look, I've been a franchise owner. I lived my life in Subway for many, many years, and there's something about authenticity to brand, right? I remember getting on the phone with Fred DeLuca at the time, many times, and he's like, guys, it's a simple sandwich shop. How can we not get this right? Right? So he was very core on the idea of simple sandwiches, and Chick-fil-A is very core on the idea of, hey, look, my cows are my mascot, so therefore they cannot be my food. That is their model. Moving into burgers is a huge move, and maybe there's some value in it and saying, hey, look, let's go sell it to people. But I mean, I'd rather, if you're trying to make more money, if you're trying to get more average revenue per customer up, go open on Sunday. That'll solve your problem. This is not the route to go and disrupt the whole brand. This will be a dud move by Chick-fil-A if they went this route.
I agree, right? I think that their core, and it's very hard to move away from your core to the brand. But here's what I think is fascinating. For them to open on Sundays would be a much bigger anathema, would be way bigger, like, crashing of their values than them expanding their menu to say, we're going to offer beef. And here's the thing that I think Chick-fil-A is facing. They've already achieved, right, to some degree, probably as much customer penetration as they can get, given what they sell. Like, people love Chick-fil-A. They line up, they're going in circles. Like, again, not social issues notwithstanding. Let's put that aside because we've got a whole podcast just on that. But if you think about it, like, they probably in any given area say, you know what? I'm going to make up these numbers. 80% of the people eat here. They like us. Like, if they have a choice between Chick-fil-A and something else, they're already choosing us. Like, we are already number one, guys. And guess what? They're they're upsizing their fries. They're getting the fruit bowl. Like, they're getting everything. So what more, where do we have room? So I think this is a potential test for them to answer that and say, well, what if we offered beef for people who don't eat chicken? Now could we get maybe 85%, 90% of the populace? And I think what's interesting is they have such a strong brand. So if like this was a theme for the show, I would say like reputation seems to be the theme. They have such a strong reputation that I think it gives them crossover power. It's kind of like Taylor Swift. If tomorrow she decided to act in a movie, that movie would sell out within seconds, right? Like, she's not an actress. She's never acted in anything. It would be her like debut performance, but you could see that movie being like nominated for Oscars or whatever. And I think that goes to the power of community. So I totally hear what you're saying, Salim. I don't think Subway ever had that. I don't think they ever had like that, deep love that people have, or those strong feelings. Like, it was a good sandwich, right? And so for them to have done this, I agree. I think that would have been like, ooh, you are really going off menu. But I think if any brand can pull it off, it might just be Chick-fil-A.
I totally agree, Shama. Did you guys ever see that tweet where, by the way, about Sundays, where someone wants to create a business where they have a food truck at Chick-fil-A and they sell chicken sandwiches and they're going to call it Side Chick?
We did a we did a case study on that in MBA school of what happens in the revenue potential of a company that would open up in the parking lot of a Chick-fil-A on Sunday and sold basically the same product. And it was a high potential revenue penetration. It was 180 million first year, and then I think it grew at a 10% CAGR year over year because of just the penetration.
Wow. Well, I totally agree, Shama. Opening on Sunday would be a shift from your like moral standing on, something that they've always hold close to their hearts. And, Hobby Lobby is the same way. I think that's still core. But I think the Taylor Swift thing you said is absolutely perfect. There's so many key icons in America that can just do something random and it just works. And this is that random thing that Chick-fil-A can probably do, and it could probably work. I could definitely see,
shoes, right? Like, they're still keeping in the food business. So
absolutely.
it's not like a huge, although with Chick-fil-A, don't you think people would buy their kicks? Like, I think people would. I think they'd buy like anything because you have such diehard fans.
Here.
Yeah, I prepped a stud and dud take for this because I was so conflicted on which side to go. I think I hear you guys. I literally wrote this in my notes. Chick-fil-A can literally do nothing wrong. They can be not open on Sundays, be ultra conservative, and now trying to sell burgers. People will still always come. They can literally do nothing wrong. Chick-fil-A is America's favorite restaurant for 8th straight year in a row. Yet every once in a while, we hear them in the media waves with some little bit of hate, but that had never changed them being the favorite restaurant in the U.S. And then I'm looking at Salim's take. Fastest growing restaurants businesses always have the shortest menus and the longest lines, right? And the top 4 of the fast food chains in the country, revenue by location, Portillo's, Chick-fil-A, Cane's, and In-N-Out. None of these guys have a very complex menu. They stick to what they know. They sell a whole bunch of it, and they do really, really well. Remember the chicken sandwich wars of 2019? Every fast food competitor was coming out with chicken sandwiches. Chick-fil-A didn't even see a sales drop despite all that competition. Why? Because generalists are never leaders in any growing market. So I'm going to be on the side of Salim here. I don't think they're going to do it. They're not going to roll it out. I really think this is just to get people's attention to say, hey, Chick-fil-A, what happens if we try to sell burgers? Well, you can go to this one location.
You guys are all buying me Chick-fil-A for a month.
Done.
Right?
I don't know if y'all know, but Chick-fil-A actually started off at Waffle House. y'all know that?
Oh,
The
I
true
didn't.
story, the real story is the guy who invented Chick-fil-A sandwiches started off at Waffle House, but they started outselling the waffle. And the CEO got pissed off and said, "I don't want to sell chicken sandwiches anymore because they were outselling the waffle." This place is called Waffle House, so therefore, hence they're both in Atlanta, right? They split off, and that's where Chick-fil-A was grown from.
If Burger King can sell chicken sandwiches, Chick-fil-A can sell burgers. I will take us into the next topic. Ads that become iconic to me are the ones that feed a narrative about reality. In the latest Beats headphones ad, they do an awesome job to add to the story about LeBron James going into year 21 in the NBA, calling out all the critics about it. It's narrated by LeBron's wife, Savannah, who calls him in the spot and leaves him a message. LeBron is listening through the new Beats Studio Pro headphones, and she tells him, quote, "The critics are talking about how you can't do it again. But the pressure doesn't break you, it feeds you. After 21 years in, you just get stronger. So do it again. Be 23, then 6, then back to 23 again. Hit the open man again. 38,000 again. Break records like a broken record and put the league on notice again. Put Akron on the map again. Tell them you aren't done until you play with your son. Then do that again. Show them why you're the GOAT, the king, again." Those of you that don't follow the NBA or who know LeBron's story, where he came from, what he has accomplished, he's going into year 21, and this ad just gave me chills. It features Savannah, LeBron's two sons, Bronny and Bryce, and it seems like a real evolution of the LeBron James Beats headphones partnership. What do you guys think of this ad?
It sounds like it was written by ChatGPT. I saw the ad. I think it meets expectations. I think his story is so interesting. As I said, ChatGPT could write this. It would be great, right?
Yep.
How much more sizzle are you going to add to LeBron? Like, this could be anything, right? It's not just the headphones. And so I almost think, like, good advertising to me, or good marketing often is like, is that the hero? And I think in this case, like, by the end of the ad, I was like, what is he sell? Like, what was I supposed to focus on? Like, it's a great story, but I think that gets kind of lost. And so, like, oh, it's an afterthought. Like, oh, it was about the Beats headphones. That's right. So I know, like, people love this ad. It's not a bad ad. I'm not a huge fan of it, right? For, like, that reason.
I totally agree with Samir that it did give me chills as well. Savannah, I would run through a wall for you after that ad, personally. But I cannot unhear what Shama said now, and so any point I make is just going to be like, it was written by ChatGPT. I think the angle is really interesting, though, because Savannah has been the quiet figure behind LeBron. LeBron's always been the icon and everything. And there's this mystery about Savannah that with LeBron being so out there as a figurehead and an icon in the American fabric, and suddenly you hear from Savannah, it's like, oh, this is the woman behind that man, that guy, right? And so having her speak up, and then there's that kind of power into it, and I think it definitely does pull at the heartstrings of someone who has a deep partnership with their spouse, and they depend on them to give them that motivation and everything. That's how I felt it, right? Like I have that relationship with my wife, and so that's something that did pull at my heartstrings. But in all, I do think the pros on it could have been improved. And yeah, until you mentioned it, I would have not ever thought about where's the product placement in this. Like you do kind of forget about the Beats thing, but when you think back to some of the stuff that Michael Jordan did, like the Become Legendary work and this and that, like those were all really good commercials, and you kind of forget that, oh, those are not really selling. I mean, they were selling Jordans, but there were so many other ads that they did with Michael Jordan that were chilling, and you don't remember the product, but you do remember the ad.
But I think there's a difference, right? If you look at
Yeah.
Jordans and you look at Nike, this would be on brand for them, right? If they did something like this, feel inspired, feel good by wearing Nike, by wearing Jordans, I think it's on brand. When it comes to a tech product, this is off brand, right? Because when you look at year over year sales, they're pretty flat for Beats. But then you look at something like AirPods, which is the same company. Apple owns both of them, but their revenue keeps jumping up, billions and $1 billion a year over year growth, right? And that's because when you look at the AirPod ads, they're very much focused on the quality, the product, the technology behind them, versus Beats, which in this scenario was very much, hey, this is just me clearly hearing my spouse. in an isolated world, right? That was this conversation, and I think it is off brand for them. Now they're trying to be something else that's different, but is this going to move units? Are people going to go buy Beats because they saw LeBron in this ad? No, it's not going to move product, right? So it's great ad, great feature, great storytelling, beautiful campaign for whoever the agency was on record for this. But is it really going to move the needle on the revenue generation, which has been kind of flat year over year? No, I don't think so. So I want Shama's vote with this one. I think it's a dud move.
See, I debate that principle in the ad agency a lot. I don't think every ad is designed to move product. And
No,
this is not that either, right? And so
awards. That's it. Like so
yeah,
many ads.
that's
Like,
a great one.
How can we win an award? How can we get this to Cannes? Like the idea of how much product to move. Like Salim and I being in the B2B world, it's different, man. You gotta drive leads. You gotta drive like business. It can't just be for like the idea of just being brand led or it's awesome, right? But I know so many agencies and what they want to do is create award-winning work, the storytelling, the excitement. It's like, and you see it in the Super Bowl, you're like, what was it? What did I just watch an ad for? Like, I know a lot happened, but I have no idea. Like, and they've done these studies where after the Super Bowl, they're like, do you remember this ad? Be like, yeah, I remember. And be like, okay, cool. Like, what was the product? And they're like, I don't know. Like, what product? So I just think it'd be interesting for people to see this. And then if you come back to it in 6 months and say, what was the product? Right? Because it could have been just as easily for AirPods or a phone or like whatever. And so, no, I love the take on it. I do. I think, with Savannah, like pulls at heartstrings. You're like, oh, wow, like you get sort of an inside look at like LeBron's, head game, like what his personal relationships are like. And I'm sure they will win an award for it. But how much does it actually move the needle for the company? I think that's debatable.
Yeah, I would have loved to get the brief for this assignment in the ad agency world, right? To tell me, go and figure out what LeBron's year 21 story is supposed to be. And that's the brief. It's not, the brief was not to sell product here. But what I do think that impacts in Beats' kind of long-term goal here, I don't think Beats was ever really a technology product. I'm gonna say that they were a consumer product who have just figured out how to make technology a lot more relatable to the average person. This is not a technology for audiophiles who understand the technical terminology, right? We see this a lot in consumer tech, right? This is what Intel banked their entire business off of. This is what like all of these computer manufacturers rely too much on specs and technical specs and not really enough about the benefits. And I think Beats' approach to marketing has always been to try to connect with culture. And I think that's what they've continued to do here. Shama, you make a good point about how do you keep the story with LeBron fresh? LeBron has been with Beats since 2008. You can't run the same play every year over and over again, right? LeBron wearing Beats during warm-up in the gym. Oh, cool. Doesn't get you anywhere. But that's what I was really impressed with this ad, is that they've embraced what LeBron's storyline is today, and they've added to it in real time. And I think any basketball fan like myself who hears these numbers and these figures that they had in this ad, 38,000, to the average person, probably that doesn't mean anything, right? But if you know what LeBron has done in the last year, 38,000 is a very significant number, and they found a way to make that relevant and connected to me. That's what was really phenomenal to me about it.
Look, guys, this is the house of Apple that's putting this out. You have to remember that this is still an Apple product, and it is always why first, product second. And product is a byproduct of your why. So I think they tried to hit that in a very different non-Apple way to still give its own identity. But I think it works. I agree that it could have been better, but I think there's a certain association with the intensity of an athlete in preparation that Beats continues to try to associate with. And I think they captured that totally.
My suggestion would have been tie this up with like a growing athlete. Like, hey, this is LeBron. He's inspiring others. Like mimic that with a natural some consumer that could actually pertain to what LeBron is going after, or even of his son, right? And saying, hey, inspiring the next one to be like him. I think there could have been a different spin to this where I think it would have really upticked the Beats product and the inspiration idea of that. I think still missed somewhere.
Beats, if you're wanting to hire Salim, might be available.
As long as I get to hang out with Dr. Dre and LeBron.
Well, he's in demand though, so they better come to the table with a good offer. He's out.
All right, guys, this is our Brands to Watch segment where we talk about up and coming brands and see if they really have legs to go the distance. We'll start with Shama.
So my brand, and in full disclosure, they're a client of ours, but I think the CEO is the only one I know who has more followers on LinkedIn than I do. And his name is John Burns, and the company is called John Burns Research and Consulting. And they are basically a McKinsey for the real estate world, right? So these guys put out great information on anything residential, like what's trending, what's happening. It's the wild, wild world of real estate. And the reason I think that they're such an impressive company to watch is because they're not your traditional consumer brand. They are a professional services in a niche space, in a B2B, in the B2B arena, but they're killing it. I mean, I think John has like 700,000 something LinkedIn followers, and their analysts are on board. Almost nothing gets published about real estate in the US without quoting their research in it. Like, it's just phenomenal to see that and how active they are without being really showy about it. Like, it's not, right? They're not dropping crazy ads. Their consistency and their approach to LinkedIn is definitely one that I highly recommend folks keep an eye on or watch, especially if you're not in a quote unquote sexy industry or a sexy business.
Yeah, it's interesting to see how, in his case, being the face of his own firm, what kind of strategies he employs to be on LinkedIn and the presence that he chooses to create. Like Shama, I think you kind of play a similar role in how you represent your company, which is what's gotten you your notoriety within LinkedIn. So definitely some things I want to watch on how he manages and handles LinkedIn and how he uses it for his benefit for his business.
For sure.
Where's all the love for Mad Men Pod on LinkedIn though? There's like 0 engagement, 0 likes, 0 comments. Like, we get a lot more love on Instagram and TikTok.
But here's the thing that you have to remember. I know of your podcast, right? I've never commented. I've never hit the like button, but I'm consuming. And I think this is what people forget. Consumption is engagement. Like,
Yeah.
the majority of people listening to this right now are never going to raise their hand and be like, great job, guys. Like, gosh, like that thing about Chick-fil-A is so cool. Like, no, like most people are just not going to do that. And I think this is such a hard thing for so many people to understand is that, the novelty of the internet has worn off. Like, this is not the internet of the last 10, 20 years where we were all excited about our AIM screen names and like dropping our email addresses in every box that we could find. And like, it's changed dramatically. And so when you have that, when people are like, no, I'm not giving up my privacy so easily. No, like, you can't cookie me and follow me, or like, it changes things. And so it does, like, even you just have to make sure that you're measuring success to just through consumption and not through how many people are raising their hand and, talking back, because it just doesn't happen. And in fact, the more polished your buyer is, the more senior level they are, the less likely they are to actually engage publicly with your posts.
Very fair point. I actually say the same thing to my social media team too. They still refer to clicks or reactions and comments as engagement. They wouldn't ever consider views as engagement. But I always say is like, okay, if you had, if we get 2,000 views on a video, say if you had 2,000 people walk in and saw your display in a store right now, would you say that was a good day? And you'd say, of course that was, right? And so, you're absolutely right about that.
I know people call it like vanity metrics, but you know who called it vanity metrics? Search engines who wanted you to buy their advertising. So they were like, those are vanity metrics. Let us sell you. But those are really, really clarity metrics.
Yeah.
And the fact that you can actually say that and be like, guys, wouldn't we want people to watch this? Like, if 2,000 people took time out of their day to watch, like, that means something. And if your team posts things that are controversial, like, I can give you 4 topics that you can post about right now, you will get gangbuster comments. But is that really what you want? Like, like, to do that, you have to really poke, or it has to be outrageous in some way, or get people's ire up. And it's like most brands don't want that, and it's completely unnecessary.
Right. I will take us into our next brand to watch. My brand to watch is a brand that just filed bankruptcy after hitting $180 million revenue. I want to highlight Hello Bello, the baby product brand. They were founded by celebrity couple Kristen Bell and Dax Shepard in 2019. Their unique offering was affordable plant-derived baby products. They had a D2C model. It was thriving. They had a diaper subscription service during COVID. It was huge for them. They ended up getting into the retail game and launched exclusively at Walmart at almost 5,000 locations. They had 10 products across multiple SKUs, and they were lower priced than Huggies, Pampers, and Honest. The celebrity couple used their 18 million Instagram followers to drive the marketing until its manufacturer raised prices by 18%. Their entire brand was built on affordability. So Walmart, of course, refused the price increase. So their margins were crushed. They tried opening up their own manufacturing facility, but surprisingly, diapers are really hard to make. They only saved about 5 cents per diaper with their own facility. Then in 2021, Apple updated its privacy settings, so now Facebook ads were less effective, and Hello Bello was dependent on Facebook ads to grow their business. Hello Bello is the latest example of many D2C businesses that are struggling amid inflation pressure and higher interest rates. Allbirds, Casper, Warby, Parade, Outdoor Voice, even Jessica Alba's Honest baby company lost 90% of its value since its 2021 IPO. There's a bigger point to make here, and that's direct consumer is a business model, not a channel. Looking into diversifying your route to market is an entirely different business model. And Hello Bello just wasn't equipped to play the retail game. It's a tough world out there for D2C brands, and we just witnessed another casualty. I think it's really interesting to see D2C brands continue to diversify. I think it's the logical next step, but I think they underestimate how difficult it is, especially when you get Walmart signed up on board and the manufacturing dependency that you have. So just wanted to highlight that. Hello Bello, sad to see what's happened to it. But it's something definitely to watch, and it's just one of the many failed D2C stories that we're hearing these days.
Does anybody hear the story of diapers.com? Diapers.com was one of the biggest, largest diaper sellers online. Amazon wanted to get in the diaper business. They wanted to acquire diapers.com. Diapers.com wouldn't sell. And then one day Amazon decides, hey, we're just going to outprice them. And they would go, I think they lost $3 to $4 million on diaper sales. Amazon did just so they could make the other company file bankruptcy so they could acquire the domain diapers.com. These are the examples that Simmer talks about, right? There's a lot going on, and as these D2C brands start to grow, they need to diversify themselves and figure out, we talked about Popsy last week, right? The soda company that, hey, look, they're doing great direct to consumers, but they're going to have to figure out a pricing model that's going to be suitable for them to grow. Poppy, right? But yeah, I think it's clear to note, and it's definitely something to watch. So if we're looking at direct-to-consumer brands, I think the biggest one you can talk about is Shein or Shein. Chinese e-commerce giant Shein is making major moves here in the U.S. as it looks to becoming the first real IPO for 2024. Earlier this year, Shein acquired a third of equity into Spark within a joint venture between Simone Malls and Authentic Brand Groups, which owns clothing companies like Forever 21. You see what's happening here? Yes. This immediately launched a partnership with Forever 21, allowing them to drop pop-up shops inside Forever and work with them on designing and manufacturing, which Shein is already good at. Not only does this partnership give them brick and mortar, but also secures influential allies with a hope to prevent regulatory problems as they go into the IPO market 2024. Such a bigger game is being played here by Shein. I'm all in on the business strategy, and this is why I think Shein is my brand to watch. Shein.
I will like to give a little bit of a rebuttal. We don't realize, but Shein actually takes advantage of a loophole in shipping, right? So when you do small parcel shipping from China into the US, you don't have to pay those duties as if they were to be received from a warehouse. And then, and so same goes for me whenever I import from overseas, my product, I receive it, I have to pay duties on that product. Because Shein is sending small parcel packages, they don't have to pay those same duties, and those savings then get passed on to the consumer. The problem with that is if that law ever changes, this could actually be really, really bad for Shein. funny enough, there's a new business model starting with a lot of brands where they're actually moving their fulfillment centers to Mexico and do small parcel packaging into the US. So people are going to try to leverage that and do that arbitrage of like getting small parcel packages put in. My fear for Shein going IPO is that if that ever changes, I really do not care at all about Shein. I am not scared for you at all. I hope this does get implemented, but small parcel packaging, that loophole needs to get closed. It's really killing American businesses. I think it's totally unfair, and they've taken advantage of that.
Yeah, Adil, I absolutely agree. I don't think people realize that it's cheaper for Chinese companies to mail packages to American consumers than it is for American businesses. And all because we were trying to encourage pen pals back in the day as part of a cultural exchange. And like, yeah, you have the internet now. Don't really need it. If that's your, if you want a pen pal, you can have a pen pal. Yeah, I absolutely agree. It's an interesting company, right? And then it's also interesting to see it flourish when there's so much talk about sustainability and what we buy from, and this push against anti-consumerism. And the company represents the opposite of all of those things. So I certainly think it'll be interesting because I think what people say and then they do, there's often a disconnect there.
But I think that's why the partnership is important, right? Their ability to go buy a third equity into Spark, which is a huge, huge influencer in the market, right? They own the malls, they own clothing brands, and Forever 21 is only one of them, right? The American Eagle, they own Nautica, they own a few others. I mean, these guys are huge influencers in the government market, old school business, beat. So I think they're onto something here, and they're kind of using your model, right? The deal with the idea that, hey, look, they're a U.S. company that's shipping from China straight here as a distribution channel. Be interesting to see what happens with the brand. That's whether the brand to watch. But I think their acquisition of Spark is huge for them. Fair enough.
Yeah, they're definitely they're doing strategic things to obviously build notoriety within America. Aside, even if that loophole does close, they're still gonna be fine. We obviously know that they're a behemoth now. But good episode, guys. I mean, Shama, thank you so much. You brought some really good information and had some awesome takes. Salim, Samir, myself, we did all right. Shama totally stole the show today.
Oh, this was fun. Thanks so much for inviting me, boys. This was fun, and anything for Salim.
I appreciate that. Thank you.
All right, guys. Stay fabulous.
Ciao.
See ya.
Thanks, guys.
Men go mad.
He's gone mad.
Mad Men.
You're bad.
The man's mad.
Mad Men.
I'm mad.